We are moving toward the longest night, into a time of mystery. With the increased dark of winter, the glow of a single flame shines brighter and takes on new meaning. Tonight is the 8th night of Hanukkah, celebrated by our Jewish kin to honor the mystery of the oil that burned long enough to keep the broken temple lit. It was just long enough for more oil to be made, long enough to create an everlasting light. This is also the last day of Chalaka, our Unitarian Universalist holiday celebrating the principles and the symbol of our faith, the flaming chalice, a beacon of hope in a world of suffering. That's why I have the 7 chalices spread out, one representing each of our 7 principles. That symbol of the flaming chalice came in a time of despair in the human family during World War II, when human cruelty overshadowed our capacity to offer hope, healing, and love. In a time when we could not deny we are our own worst enemies, we found, as we can always find, that we also bring to one another compassion and redemption. This is the second Sunday of Advent, the Christian season of anticipation, awaiting the birth of Jesus. Each week of Advent is marked with a different theme. Candles are lit for hope, peace, joy, and love. Prayers for peace are on the minds and hearts of Christians throughout the world this day. Mysticism is woven throughout our religious human fabric, and centuries of mystics have marked this time of darkness, of quiet, of moving inward, seeking not to unravel mystery, but to dive into it, to explore what is unknown, unfathomable, even frightening. The reading this morning by Rabbi Kushner explains mysticism as a quest to uncover the hidden unity that resides within, among, and beyond us all. The light of a single flame burning in the darkness to illumine the way. The search for hidden unity is manifested in the Jewish concept of tikkun olam, repairing the world through individual acts of kindness. As Unitarian Universalists, we don't have a common belief or creed, but if I had to name one, it would be the ideas expressed in our 1st and 7th principles that each person matters and has value, and that we are all connected. In Essex Conversations, religious educator Francis Manley describes the principles as a powerful tool for recognizing the fullness of our humanity as profoundly, radically relational individuals. She explains that the 7 principles are built on the tension between the individualism of the first and the interconnection of the last. As human beings, she writes, we are always in dynamic tension between separateness and connection, between individualism and community, between autonomy and interdependence. If you consider the principles as an archway, with the 1st and 7th principles as the base, individual human value on the one side and our profound interconnection on the other, we can stack the 2nd principle and the 6th principle on top of those, peace and equity in our individual relationships and world community, respectively. From there, we build and add encouragement for our individual growth and the democratic process. The keystone, the linchpin, the piece that holds that dynamic tension together, creating a portal through which we can move, is the 4th principle, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Without that keystone, individual freedom and responsibility to one another, the archway would collapse. In our progressive faith, we often emphasize that individual freedom, and we forget the responsibility of community and the obligation to our interconnectedness. We are all connected to all things that have been and ever will be, yet we move through the world so often feeling alone, separate, disconnected. Isolation, discord, and disunity are reflected in our world and in particular our country right now. Finding the hidden unity can feel like a hopeless quest. But the hidden unity resides within, among, and beyond us at every moment and in every place. This is the foundation of mysticism across traditions. Rumi, 13th century Persian Sufi mystic, believed in music and dance as the portal to knowing God and ultimate union with the ground of being. Come, come, whoever you are, he said, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, urging followers to return again and again with one another toward the all-encompassing source of love. Hildegard of Bingen, 12th century German Christian mystic, found connection to God in the natural world. A poet, she wrote, "Good people, most royal greening verdancy, rooted in the sun, you shine with radiant light. You are encircled by the arms of the mystery of God." Our transcendentalist forebears, Emerson and Thoreau, found God in nature too. And many of us can think about an experience of our feeling our universal connection, looking at the stars or sitting by the water. Any of us can claim to be a mystic if we comprehend the interconnection of being and have touched the wonder and awe in the natural world. One of my most powerful mystical experiences was at the edge of the Grand Canyon almost 30 years ago when I felt so very small and at the same time so comforted by a sense of unity and oneness with all there is. That's transcendence, the sense of ultimacy, vastness, a limitless universe that we are just a tiny part of. Immanence is the partner of transcendence. The idea that the divine is not just beyond, but within and among the world, us, nature, that we are nature and that nature is all there is, in the words of William David Hart. The search for knowledge and understanding, the quest to unravel mystery, reveals our deepest longing for connection, to know we are not alone, that we belong. We search in the dark for the light of connection. When we touch upon it, feel its powerful presence, and then it eludes us. We call it mystery. I truly believe in that interconnection, that I am part of all things and all things are a part of me, that I have an impact on everything, however small, and that I am at the same time impacted by everything. And I forget all the time. What might be possible if we were more present to our hidden unity? How might the world be transformed if we truly embrace the mystery of our complex interconnection, knowing in everyday ways that each of us matters, that we are individually free and deeply responsible for one another because of our profound interconnection to all that is? What if we really lived our principles? Last month, I attended, along with several UCE members, the Chicago area UU Council gathering at Countryside Church in Palatine. Countryside, woo! Countryside in the house. Michael Hogue, professor of theology at Meadville Lombard Theological School, spoke about his book, American Immanence, Democracy for an Uncertain World. As a brief plug, Reverend Greg and I are working with Meadville Lombard to bring a similar program here to UCE with Mike this spring. So we're calling it a Seminary for a Day. Look for that, and I hope you can attend. I bought the book, and I won't lie to you, it is dense. And full disclosure, I've only read the introduction and part of the first chapter, but that's plenty to chew on. I am finding that it offers hope in the form of new ways of framing ideas such as democracy, revolution, and immanence. It doesn't offer false hope, but hope rooted in the natural world and our place in it. Hogue explores the tradition of American immanence in contrast to the corrosive ideology of American exceptionalism, the belief that we as a nation and as a people are superior and, because of our democratic ideals, entitled to wealth and power. Now, I don't imagine that any of you in this room claim that as a personal narrative or a belief statement, but we can't deny that our country has been founded on and continues to operate under the false ideology of American exceptionalism. Comparatively, the tradition of American immanence refuses exceptions of all kinds, honors nature as the sublime, all-inclusive context and all-pervasive dynamic of being and becoming, Hogue writes. The concept of American immanence is the antidote to the divisiveness of our current theopolitical climate. We are not exceptional, and that doesn't mean we are without value and dignity. On the contrary, it is our immanence, our oneness with all that is, our connection to each other and all things, to the divine, that is the basis of our value. Dr. Hogue also offers American immanence as a more generative and loving response to complexity. We are living in complex times, for sure. The more complex our world is, the more uncertain we feel. I don't need to tell you about the effects of rising anxiety. This complexity, uncertainty, and anxiety breeds in all of us a desire for simple answers, which in turn creates an opportunity for those who would offer false and simple solutions, peddle lies, and prey on fears. Our hunger for simple answers to complex problems breeds authoritarianism and fundamentalism, as evidenced by the rise of authoritarian world leaders, including our own, and the fact that fundamentalist religious movements are the only ones growing. The antidote is to embrace complexity, reorient ourselves toward mystery, connectivity, collectivism, and to rebalance our self-destructive individualism with the reality of our interconnection. We've been in uncertain times before. We've fallen prey to authoritarian regimes, abusers of power, and false, simple solutions to complex problems. The revolution that started this nation, the Civil War that nearly tore it apart, and the Civil Rights Movement that sought to repair its foundational commodification and annihilation of human beings. In the breakdown, there is fertile ground for change. Out of each of these moments in our nation's history, along with the destruction and collapse, came a collaborative, collective, life-affirming power of the people. Each of these times of crisis has generated the possibility of imminent revolution. You may question why I'm speaking of revolution on the second Sunday of Advent, the Sunday of peace, as you'll recall. But by revolution, I don't mean violence, although certainly violence often attends revolution. We're seeing that right now. However, Chinese-American activist Grace Lee Boggs describes revolution this way: a revolution involves making an revolutionary leap toward becoming more socially responsible and more self-critical human beings. In order to transform the world, we must transform ourselves. Revolution is the action of change agents from within the system as part of the system. An American immanental revolution is what is needed now. Powerful change from within systems comes from knowing and understanding this profound immanence that we are one with the ground of being, with nature, with the universe, with all there is. We are the change agents from within. I watch for encouraging signs of creative revolutionary response, and believe it or not, I found one in the news this week. You do have to really look. At the UN Climate Summit happening in Katowice, Poland, even though the president decided to withdraw the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement, hundreds of city and state governments and corporations are remaining committed to reducing carbon emissions and countering the effect of global climate change locally and collectively. By staying in it, remaining engaged, and responding collectively, we can generate possibilities for creative, revolutionary peace. And I know they're discussing this at Forum next week, so. I find hope in movements like the Poor People's Campaign. I think of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, of restorative justice and peace circles, of the African concept of Ubuntu. These are examples of individuals staying in it, in the immanence, through the complexity, the messiness, the imperfectness of change, the earthy mystery of our unity, to find renewal after breakdown. Revolution begins with resistance, with resisting despair and embracing possibility, regardless of the improbability. Revolution begins with resisting the opiate of simple solutions to complex problems. It begins with refusing to believe that we are separate, exceptional, or that our lives are disparate. In these dark and anxious times, we may be drawn to hopelessness and despair, to feeling lost and powerless, cut off from each other and from the earth. It is easy to feel that we have no impact on the world, but we must recall the hidden unity we dwell within and the ways in which each of us has an impact on each other. And by repairing one broken piece at a time, we can impact the whole of being. Last week, I was able to reconnect with the once little girl I took care of when I was in college, now a grown and, might I add, amazing woman. She sent me a text, a picture of a Maxell cassette tape. Remember those? Written on the cassette in my handwriting was the title, "Free to Be You and Me." Okay, I'm glad some of you know what that is. For those of you born either before about 1965 or maybe after 1980, I'll explain. Free to Be You and Me was an album featuring Marlo Thomas and Alan Alda, among others, with stories and songs for children with a decidedly liberal agenda. Songs on the album include It's All Right to Cry, sung by football player and knitter Rosie Greer, and William Wants a Doll, and Parents Are People. I sang along to every word of every song on that album as a kid, and I shared it with my young charge a dozen years later. Not a big deal, right? She has grown up to be, again, one of the most incredible people I know, fierce and smart and dedicated to social justice, and she's given me credit, at least partial credit, for inspiring that commitment. I am totally blown away by this because I never considered myself an advocate for social justice or even capable of inspiring anyone in even the slightest way when I was in my 20s. I share that not to toot my own horn. I share it because it reminds me that we have an impact on one another in ways that we don't know or understand. I have an impact on her, and she has had an impact on me in profound and mysterious ways. We can multiply this story by 7.5 billion. When I asked her if I could share this story with you, she referred me to a video by Drew Dudley on everyday leadership and lollipop moments. A lollipop moment is letting people know when they've impacted your life, letting others know that they matter, that they have made a difference. He talks about this idea that Marianne Williamson has put into words about how frightening it is to share our light because it creates in us a sense of obligation for us to shine in every day and every way. And quite frankly, life is hard enough. But he also says this: somewhere along the way, we made leadership about changing the world. There is no world. There's just 7 billion understandings of it. And that means every time you change one person's understanding of the world, of how powerful an agent of change they can be in their own life, you change the world. Tikkun olam. We must remember the powerful impact of our hidden unity. We are one with all that is, not just players on the backdrop of nature, but infinitely, intimately, and intricately interconnected. That is the very unmysterious mystery of life, which is anything but simple to remember, feel, or live. Within all being is becoming. Within us, individually and collectively, lies the possibility of everything we might become. Let us imagine what is possible. Where can you plant seeds of peaceful, creative revolution in the fertile, broken ground? How will you embrace the mystery of our hidden unity and tell someone that they matter today? As we move into the dark mystery of this season of waiting for the miracle of light, of birth, of connection to be manifested in our lives, may we remain hopefully immersed in the business of living, loving, and remembering our hidden unity.